My name is Adisa Stevens. I am a PhD student at Chichester University under the supervision of Professor Hakeem Adi, and my body of work is called The History and Evolution of Ideas and Practices of African-Centered Organizations in the UK from 1975 to 2015. At that time, we were being isolated or excluded in housing, in jobs, and education was inadequate. So there was a sense of that we weren't always included into the broader society. So that way we became insulated, i.e. we started to look within our own community to develop our own ideas and our own practices. And that way, because in a sense, people from the Caribbean come from different islands, they have slightly different cultures, different languages, etc. So we had to unify under one idea, one body. So example, black was one idea, but also Pan-Africanism also gave us another idea to connect with the wider African or black society globally. An idea into those ideologies is black in the sense of the political meaning came from the Black Power movement, like I said, with Kwame Ture, who looked for black power. So black is an evolution of different terms that came out of, if we want to go back to ancient history, we could say back to Kemet, which is the ancient Egyptian word, which means black or the black land. But we also had the word Sudan or Bilas al-Sudan, which is the Arabic term meaning the black land as well. So there is a history of the term or the usage of the word black. In the later term, we came from the use of the word Negro in America, and then we've got the N-word, which I'm not going to say here, but we also then developed to colored and black. So it's got a political meaning in that sense, and it's not necessarily about your color, as in your shade, but your political ideology, what you stand for, and in a sense, what you're going to die for. So black has an evolution that goes way back. In the UK, most people who came from the Caribbean tended to associate with their islands. So if you was from Jamaica, you Jamaican, St. Lucian, Trinidad, etc. But like I said, to unify us as one people, we looked for the word black. And that was mainly coming from the second generation of black people in the UK. So the ones who were born here after the Windrush era. So we sought to unify around that term, black. There isn't one single definition of Pan-Africanism, because it's manifested in different ways, different places, and different times. So in America, Pan-Africanism means one thing. In Africa, the continent, in various places and times, it meant something else, and in the Caribbean, something else. So in the UK, Pan-Africanism generally means to connect with the global struggle of black people around the world. So in other words, it's fighting against racism, it's fighting against oppression, but it's also looking to instill a sense of cultural heritage, a sense of returning back to Africa, the motherland, and a sense of identity in ourselves as one people. So what you find in Britain during the 60s and 70s is the idea of Pan-Africanism growing in amongst a small amount of people and then into the wider community. So the ideas came from some members of the BLF, which is the Black Liberation Front, who went to the 6th Pan-African Conference in Dar es Salaam. And during that conference, there was an emphasis on the African or Africanization of the approach towards Pan-Africanism. In other words, we would look more into African culture, African norms, and African societies to get our ideas of how we could instill a sense of identity and pride in ourselves, and something that could liberate us as well at the same time. So you had groups coming from that, which was the first one, which is the PAC, which is the Pan-African Committee, and that was a group of some members joining together, including ex-members of the BLF, to form an organization which was like an umbrella organization that would enable other black organizations to come and work together underneath the same banner, underneath the same ideology, and with the same aim as well. And the effect of them with Britain, I would say, is a joint effect in the sense of you also had the Rastafari movement growing as well. So Rastafari was very much looking towards Africa as the homeland, Ethiopia as Zion, etc. And they were already still in a sense of pride in the music, in the rhetoric, and in the biblical verses that they were quoting. So the idea of Rastafari, which also was sort of global Pan-African as well, connected together with Pan-Africanism as an idea, and the two worked together. Not to say that there was any other ideas that weren't floating around, but certainly the ideas were similar, and they influenced the second generation of black young men and women to want to look to Africa as a homeland. So we're going not just back to the Caribbean, but to Africa for our roots and our heritage. Other organizations of note around that time are definitely one of the founding organizations of this particular period until now is the PACM, the Pan African Congress movement. They had several branches in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, etc. And they also professed an ideology of Pan-Africanism, and they were very prominent also in promoting ALD, which is African Liberation Day, where they would galvanize the community to celebrate the independence or the future independence of Africa. So in a sense, the PACM were also influential in spreading the knowledge of our historical past through books, through lectures, through films, through newsletters, etc. And they were very influential in also in getting the information out on the streets to the people. I am also an ex-member of PACM, and once again, we were very much in the forefront of bringing people from America. I'm not going to say me in particular, but the organizers of the PACM brought very prominent lecturers from America, like Dr. Asa J. Hilliard, Dr. Jen Henry Clark, Dr. Smalls, etc. And they were very prominent in having a series of lectures over a long period of time to disseminate the information of our history and our past, and to make sure that we are able to develop a sense of pride and identity here in the UK. So PACM was definitely one of the founding organizations from the 60s onwards. They also influenced members who attended some of their lectures. For example, Al-Kabulan, Revivalist Movement, their founding members often attended some of the lectures that were put on by PACM, and they went on to found their organizations, which is an African or Pan-African spiritually based organization, who are basically a synthesis of African spiritual practices and ideologies that they are brought to light, you could say, or adapted to the modern era. Al-Kabulan also have a youth wing, which is also very prominent in disseminating the information to the younger generation. You also have the Nation of Islam, which rose in the UK, and that was following a speech which was seen on BBC TV News, which showed Minister Farrakhan talking about power, which is the economic program of the Nation of Islam in the United States, and saying that basically if the US government threatened him, there would be a price to pay. So that influenced some of the members who saw this particular newsreel, and then they went on to look for information about the Nation of Islam. So you will hear often that the information about the Nation of Islam in the UK came from cassettes and tapes. So there was very much a circulation of the tapes of Farrakhan's speeches, etc. And from that point, some brothers got together and they decided they wanted to take on the mission, you could say, of the Nation of Islam here more seriously, and to put something practical here in the UK. So the Nation of Islam members went to America, they visited Farrakhan, and they came back. And when they came back, they started to develop various things in West, South East London. That was including independent Saturday schools, bookshops, food shops, certain musical events, etc. And they also had a program of watching films and disseminating or breaking down what the hidden messages was behind the films or the books. So Nation of Islam are still currently running here today. The main base is in Brixton, and they're also working with other organizations to keep the message alive for the younger generation. Beyond the Nation of Islam, we also have another prominent movement, I would say, rather than an organization, which is the Rastafari movement here in the UK. And as I said, with the Rastafari, they've had a very influential impact on the black population in the UK in the second generation, in instilling a sense of pride, instilling a sense of self, and instilling a sense of history of where we came from a biblical point of view. But in the songs and the messages, you were able to take that on to get more research and to find out who you are. Also here in the UK, you have the OSA, or Set Society, which is a Pan-African spiritual-based organization with the mission of the upliftment and the benefit of the black people or black population here in the UK and America. Also, our Set Society also work on not only just the spiritual aspect of our development, but also on the physical, i.e. what we eat and how we live, how we meditate, and how we prepare our body for this world today. And also our Set Society have various branches around London and other parts of the UK, and they work with a small group of dedicated members, but they also have a wider society that they work with who come to their lectures or their teachings, etc. We also have the Nubian Nation. Now, the Nubian Nation have manifested in different ways in different times. So depending on what historical period you're looking at them, you may find them under a different name. For example, the Ansar Society. And you may find them with a different regalia in the dress code and different images. At the moment, they are based in Kemetic ideology and philosophy. Their teacher is Dr. Malachi Z. York, and he is also the one who has taken them through the various stages of development from one, you could say, age to another. They incorporate many of the philosophies of Pan-Africanism, of Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and also what comes out of Egypt, ancient Kemet. So they also have an aspect of an outer worldly ideology and an inner world ideology, which is part of their belief system as well. So another group I've studied is the Black Hebrew Israelites, and they have a philosophy of that we are the children of Israel and the ones who were stolen away from Africa, brought into slavery, and we are the chosen people of God. And they have branches in America, in Africa, in Israel, and also here in the UK. And the numbers are quite large, although they are not sort of a distinctive group here in the UK, but there are many people who support the beliefs and ideas of the Black Hebrew Israelites. But also to say that there are many different branches of the Hebrew Israelites, so you have to be very careful on which particular group you're speaking about at a particular time. So what's common about these organizations is that they all have a sense of unifying the African or the black population in a common goal of redemption, of returning back to Africa, not necessarily physically, but ideologically and spiritually. So they all have a sense of uniting Africans around the globe, and they all have a sense of to maintain the fight against oppression, the fight against racism, and the fight against being marginalized by the racist society. So they all, in a sense, have a common goal, which is the upliftment of African people. Where they differ is, I suppose, in their ideological perspective of how we're going to achieve that, okay, how we're going to make that manifest. So some are more spiritually based, some are more politically based, some are economically based. However, many groups do work together to achieve a common goal. These organizations have played an important part in shaping the ideology and the identity of black people here in the UK, and they continue to play an important part. The way they play this important role is by disseminating the information of Pan-Africanism, of black history, to the black people around the UK. For example, through the books, through the meetings, through the workshops, through just being a presence physically in the community to show that there is a sense of people holding the torch of Pan-Africanism in this generation. And it's important for the younger generation to be aware that these organizations are around, because there isn't a fear, from my point of view, that the next generation will start from zero. They will start from one and repeat some of the work that's already been done in the past. So the young generation need to know and learn what these organizations have done, what they have achieved, what they've put in place, and in a sense, where they've made their mistakes and how we can correct those mistakes. And from that point, then build on to the next stage. And like I said, my fear would be that we just return to stage one, and then it's just repeated, and we then, when they've finished their struggle, we're back in the same place. So Pan-Africanism is still important, and we still have a long way to go to achieve our goals. We can see Africa is on the rise, and we need the positive to prevail. And that ideology of positivity, of constructiveness will come through Pan-Africanism, African-centeredness as a way forward.